I think I'm ready to go here. Good afternoon to you down in Austin and up in Long Prairie, if that's where you are. So happy to see you today. Maybe get you a video on the day you're supposed to get it, huh? Wouldn't that be great? For a change. On December 4th, had kind of a rough start to today. You know, those are so smudgy. This is rude of me. You know, I've got 3 young men in my 9 o'clock Comp 1 out of Brainerd that greet me every day looking pretty much the same in their Zoom squares. This is just extraneous stuff. And they all 3 of them wear hoodies with a baseball cap. And that is Luke Wilhelm, Brandon Kroll, and Aiden. Aiden Packard, there's a rival Aiden in my roster down in southern Minnesota, but don't worry, you're my favorite Aiden of all time, and you're going to ace this course because you watch and like my videos. Way to figure it out. Don't worry, you're the number 1 Aiden. Okay, now I love all you, but only one of you is named Aiden. So I tried to wear a hoodie and a baseball cap to teach today, and I had this idea that it would make me feel younger. Instead, I just got all sweaty, and I had to take it off and put on an English major costume. Another editorial remark before we get going here. I think I'll just put it this way. Sometimes I get a little tuckered out by the language of political correctness, and language is actually my main topic today. The idea of words and what they sign and what they signify. And you got to forgive me. We're going to keep loving each other and forgiving each other till the end. I'm older, right? I'm 61, so the way I've used language across my entire life and the way I'm being asked to use it now is sometimes an adjustment I'm not exactly making, am I? I can give you examples. I had a sweet student a year ago. I used the word wife in class, and he said, "Aren't you supposed to use the word partner?" And I said, you know, partner implies getting along, and partner implies someone working with you in cooperation. I fight and disagree with my wife almost constantly. So I said, I ain't got a partner. I don't have a partner. I have a wife. Second example is this newfangled way of denoting history. I'm always drawing timelines on my blackboard when I have access to my blackboard. One year I tried to make them vertical. That didn't work out. They got to be horizontal. So I made this timeline, and at 0, I just want to make sure this is on. At 0, I put BC, right? That's what that is for me, BC. And some student pointed out, aren't you supposed to put BCE to denote before Christian era? BC is the old-timey way of doing it. Before Christ is what that has stood for many years. And then I teased the kid just a little bit. I said, let me try again. And I erased BCE, and then I wrote BC, even larger, to prank them a little bit. I don't think this is something the thought police are going to come and cuff me for anytime soon. But my third example is at Central Lakes College. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. We're being called to, as all the professors there are being invited to create like a video card for Christmas, and we have been let know. Okay, we just need 5 seconds, 10 seconds of you on a Zoom tape going, "Happy Holidays, season's greetings," etc. And I wrote our marketing guide because the admin who sent me that, maybe didn't realize that those files are probably too big, bigger than what the email limit size-wise will be, megabyte-wise, in the system. He says, "Whoa, that's a really good point. I better figure out a workaround for that." And I wrote back and I said, "Hey, count me in. I'd love to be part of this Christmas card, as long as I get to say Merry Christmas." I haven't heard from him yet. It's just silence right now. So you probably know already that I'll be wishing you in a few days, week and a half, I'll be wishing you a merry, I'm going to say, have yourself a merry, merry Christmas. I have a poet I want to put before you today named Robert Bly. And I got admits a couple things about Robert Bly. And we'll put it the way I've been putting it all day long to my 3 classes. You all know that you have an absolute obligation, a solemn obligation to live a life of purpose and meaning. How many times have you heard me say that? Nobody said that to me when I was 17 years old, and I wish someone had. And you're going to have to figure it out. You only have a breath of years that are going to go by you in a flash. And the deal is, even though it's impossible, you want to try to live a life without regret. You want to have as few regrets as possible. But that's not, it's not even, none of you are going to be in striking range. We all make mistakes. We all look back and go, dang, if only I had not done that, or if only I had done that. Well, to be more specific, I wished I had hosted Robert Bly when I had the chance. Robert Bly is one of us. All right, he's a Minnesotan. He taught at the University of Minnesota for years. He's just an absolute icon. Here's a picture of him being kissed on the head by Donald Hall, a U.S. Poet Laureate that I've had dinner with and hosted in my old life. And truth be told, I got a little grumpy at Robert Bly a while ago in the 90s when he came out with this book called Iron John that I didn't get. I just didn't get it. I'm sorry, I didn't get the men's movement that he tried to start. I didn't go into the woods without a shirt with Robert Bly and beat on a drum. And yet I know what he was up to, and I know that it was important. Robert Bly got very nervous in the middle of his life about the idea that some of us have fathers that are distant. And if you are experiencing your father as an absence instead of a presence, I was a below average father, but at least I was present to my wife and sons. And that idea alone should have nudged me to pay attention to him and to host him. And he's in his early 90s right now, and I know he's not giving any readings anymore. More than a few American poets have asked me when I pick them up at the airport, well, you've hosted Robert Bly, haven't you? Because he's the most important poet in Minnesota. Again, I blew it, and I should have. And now it's too late, because he's going the way of all poets towards that moment of supernova. I want to read a poem for you today that I think is very appropriate for the hour that we're living in history, which I've already proclaimed at your hearing to be decisive. This is a decisive hour, and worse things are coming our way. I know it. Before the light comes, it's going to get better. And I want to tell you one more thing before I read this poem. I want to start that again. A few years ago, I had the breathtaking opportunity to listen to Robert Bly. He offered a short reading at the American Writers Project. And I only went once because I don't fly on airplanes. And the year it came to Minneapolis, I could go. I've talked about it. It's the biggest conference in the United States for writers, writing teachers, and people who run writing series like me. And it's like 1 billion graduate students, mainly. And I had a chance to hear Robert Bly read this poem in a small theater that might have had 40 people attending. And he was in a wheelchair, and his rep in New York and friend, Allison Granucci, was holding the microphone for him so his hands would be freed up so he could read the book. And without a doubt, the most astonishing moment in that reading was when he read a poem called Keeping Our Small Boat Afloat. And there's a line in this poem, and I want to read it to you. And the line runs, "Each of us deserves to be forgiven." The line occurs in the poem in the last stanza once, first line in the last stanza. But during the reading, Robert Bly read that line twice. And the second time he read it, his eyes drifted up to the wall near the ceiling, and his voice broke. The big lump came. He got overwhelmed, and he got super sad. He could barely read the rest of the poem because it was occurring to him, probably, I'm guessing only, that it was probably one of his last poetry readings, and that he was getting very far out on the tail of the comet that Robert Bly is. And to honor him, I'll read that twice. Robert Bly, Keeping Our Small Boat Afloat. So many blessings have been given to us during the first distribution of light that we are admired in 1,000 galaxies for our grief. Don't expect us to appreciate creation or to avoid mistakes. Each of us is a latecomer to the earth, picking up wood for the fire. Every night, another beam of light slips out from the oyster's closed eye. So don't give up hope that the door of mercy may still be open. Seth and Shem, tell me, are you still grieving over the spark of light that descended with no defender near into the Egypt of Mary's womb? It's hard to grasp how much generosity is involved in letting us go on breathing when we contribute nothing valuable but our grief. Each of us deserves to be forgiven. Each of us deserves to be forgiven, if only for our persistence in keeping our small boat afloat when so many have gone down in the storm. Well, I should have hosted him. Nobody's perfect. The perfect poetry host is one that can never be found. Should have hosted Franz Wright too, even if he was completely nuts. So my principal topic today, between the poem and some dithering around about politically incorrect language possibly, is I want to talk about ways of reading. And I'm not going to get all fancy on you. I don't read a lot of literary theory and criticism. I don't know why you would read literary theory and criticism when you can read literature. I just don't have a lot of time for it. I did have an opportunity a few years ago to meet, without a doubt, the most famous literary theorist that we have. And that guy's name is Terry Eagleton. And I really found him to be an unpleasant man, really a big ego. And I don't know, maybe you deserve it if you write the definitive book on literary theory and criticism called Literary Theory. I thought he was kind of a jerk. And you can get lost in this stuff. I want to let it all, most of it, die on the vine. We could go up this road and I could turn it into a graduate class on English and I could talk about structuralism and formalism and you'd be going, wow, he's pretty smart, and you'd also be bored to tears. So I just want to kind of make it relatively, I'm not dumbing it down. I'm just sort of moving towards it, what I think are its essentials, some different ways of reading. So at the same time, I want to use a fancy term, so you don't forget that I'm an English professor, and that's the idea of a deterministic screen. The idea, I just need any kind of book here that would work. This is a good one, The Book of Imaginary Beings by Jorge Luis Borges. And I'll tell you what I told my students this morning. Usually when I want to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes on the idea of reading in ways that you might not be accustomed to, or to think about the ways other people may be reading, I usually ask students in my classroom, when I can be in my classroom, to give me sunglasses. And I'll gather 3 or 4 pairs of sunglasses, and the cheaper and the more ridiculous they are, the better. And I put on different kinds of sunglasses and stagger around the room. And I had a student named Myra in my 10 o'clock class who, when I talked about this, she instantly put on her head these super gigantic sunglasses that were pink and green. And I looked in her little Zoom score and I said, that would be perfect if only I had those sunglasses right now. But the sunglasses, the idea of the ocular metaphor, the idea of seeing and seeing in different ways, the glasses are just a prop. It's just a cheap sight gag to call on students to think in important ways. Don't worry about the word deterministic. Just let's go with screen, the idea of screens. Peering through a screen. It could be a screen and a screen door. And what I'm specifically want you to think about is the idea of putting a screen between you and any given text, no matter what it is. And I think I'll just get personal for a minute and enumerate a number of screens that I have that you may not have. And we need to think about how important this is. Like let's be obvious. On the roster, I don't see any other 61-year-old people. So I'm alone there. I'm an older dude. I'm getting to be an older cat. Still middle-aged, not decrepit yet. But let's start with that as one of my screens. I'm also male. I am a Christian. That is one of my screens. I have the screen of whiteness. I have the screen of being from the middle class. I am a relatively educated person. And I have identities too that also serve as screens. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm the father of 2 sons. I wish I had more, but only 2 boys walked into the room. I'm the son of my mother and my father sleeping in the earth. I'm a sibling to my 2 sisters, Medea and Antigone. And what I think really is important is to name these things and go, this is what I am and who I am. And when I pick up a poem or pick up a novel or a short story or go to read a face or the sky, my maleness, my Christianity, my whiteness, my middle classness frames and informs and is brought to bear on whatever it is I'm trying to understand. It's really important to think about that once in a while and just acknowledge, wow, this is the way I'm wired. Some of these things were chosen, most of them not. They weren't inflicted, they were just sort of bestowed, right? And you can't assent to everything, you can't be everything. So when I say I'm male, I'm saying I'm not a woman. When I say I'm Christian, I'm saying I'm not an atheist. I'm clapping for him, but that's not who I am. When I say I'm white, I can't be black at the same time. I'm the opposite. Aquinas taught me that everything has its antithesis. Sky, ground, cold, hot, light, darkness, etc. Everything has its antithesis. Now Burke says that deterministic screens are very much about language. And the kinds of words that you choose are going to reveal how you perceive reality, and the way that your head is wired with language is probably going to proclaim the world. You're going to proclaim how you see things to the world. And I wrote down a kind of a potentially controversial example here, but the fact is there, if you see an unborn child as a fetus, well, that's a word that you use that signs and signifies how you feel about that unborn child. One person's fetus is another person's baby. And I think you know that whichever word you prefer, whichever word you use conceptually to think of a child, I'll use that word. I love that word so much more than kid. I would never use the word kid. Child is so much more beautiful. It depends upon how you see that issue. And I just skirted it, and now I'm moving on. You get it. I know you do. So what I want to put before you are three relatively simple ways of deterministic screens that you can try out, right? You can, and you know what? I really think you should try them out. Understanding other people's viewpoints, other people's perspectives is crucial, even if you don't agree, even if it's hard for you, or even if it makes you uncomfortable, because that's what being a human being is about. That's what empathy is about. Now, I gotta cut this video right now because my brand new dishwasher is coming up the driveway. And I'm gonna have to splice this in later and make sure I'm wearing the same Pendleton, because I can't teach when stout-hearted dudes with matted hair are fixing my broken dishwasher. We'll talk about appliances when I get back. I'll run errands and I'll see you in about an hour and a half. But to you, it'll just seem like a second. Well, look at that. An hour and a half turned into 3 hours, didn't it? I was running around doing all kinds of stuff. I had to get a Christmas tree for my wife and get curbside groceries at Barley's, and I got a new dishwasher, and I'm super happy about that. And we'll get going here. But first, a little advice about appliances. Don't fix them, you guys. All you are pretty young. You're not owning homes yet, but someday you will. And when that dishwasher goes, when it just goes bricks out, stone cold dead, that's it. Get a new one. Because once you repair them, after you spend $200-300, you're halfway home towards a brand new machine. So don't do it. You mustn't do it. Get a new one. That's how America works. It's called planned obsolescence. They want us to buy stuff, and sometimes I do. I can't live without a dishwasher, and I'll never speak of dishwashers again. I was en route to telling you that it's really important to try to read in different ways so you don't get just locked into your way of seeing the world. And I've already named, all the ways that I'm kind of locked in, and but I still try to think and feel things that people are different from me might think and feel. I'm not dumbing this down for you. I don't go real deep into this, but let me put before you three possibilities, different ways of reading. There's a big thing. Marxist literary theory is a thing. And if I say the name Karl Marx, you might see him in your head if you've seen him in a textbook, a history book somewhere, that had like one of the biggest beards in the history of beards. And I've got some pretty strong opinions about Karl Marx, and some of them are not very positive. But here I'm not talking about communism or socialism. I'm talking about the idea that it's interesting once in a while to pick up a book, and this can cut a couple different ways, and ask yourself, who has money? Who in this story, what characters have money and therefore authority and power? In The Great Gatsby, it's pretty obvious. For a little while, Jay Gatsby has money, and therefore he's driving the truck. He's got that big mansion. Nick Carraway's just this, young dude who's got this crap job in New York doing goodness knows what. He does not have money, and that's why he's living in a bungalow with a leaky roof. That's one way of thinking of it. Another way of thinking about literature or art in general through the lens, through the screen of a Marxist literary critic is to ask yourself, is this art, this book, this dance thing that you've choreographed, this sculpture, this painting, might it be created to maybe challenge in a serious way, in a serious quality way, a power structure like a government or a state or a totalitarian deal? Is the art pushing back against that? Or might the art sort of be serving to support who's in charge politically? And you can think of this, I think of this in a lot of different ways, and I could give you a billion examples. Well, a bunch of examples. I think famously of Stravinsky, a Russian composer I admire, and I've read some stories about how he just got pale and got super nervous, started sweating anytime Joseph Stalin came in to hear one of his concerts. Why? Because Stalin was studying Stravinsky to make certain that he was creating music that sounded extra Russian, right? That was nationalistic. And anytime Stravinsky messed around with that, like when he got jazzy, evoking America, well, that's a pretty good way to get your hand slapped or be thrown into a gulag, concentration camp. I have hosted writers who have lived in mortal terror of the governments of the countries that they lived in. And I'm thinking here, I've already talked about this, but I'll bring it up again in this context. Sweet Osama Alamar, that Syrian poet, I've told you already that he had friends. He was one of the top writers in Syria, and he looked around one year and he realized, you know what, my friends are kind of disappearing. One minute they're in a cafe with me having coffee, and then they're gone. Well, they were being picked up by the government, and that's one of the reasons why Osama Alamar, as a poet, had to stay just crazily metaphorical, so the government didn't know what he was talking about. And when he couldn't bear up under that anymore, he left that country. And he's safe in Chicago, becoming an American. And I love that little man. What a hug he gave me at the airport. He wanted me to come visit him in Pittsburgh at this art institute that he was staying at, but I don't get around much anymore. So that's that. The second one is feminist literary theory, or a feminist literary critic. We've already talked about how literature is an institution, and institutions have a way of being excluding of certain people. We just had this conversation at the honors faculty at Central Lakes College. We had a whole hour meeting on Zoom, and that was the question. Are we making this inclusive enough, or are we excluding people? Well, in an institution like literature, I can tell you that women have been excluded for centuries, you guys. We had some fantastic characters in ancient Greek literature, in the tragedies. Like Medea, man, she kills her children and heads out in a flaming chariot with the gods helping her because she's not holding a sign. She's holding a sign that says, I'm not from around here. I don't have to follow your rules. Valerie, don't do that. Don't do that and head off on a chariot. I'm not worried. I know you won't. For 1,000 years, women are in bed in the medieval period as temptresses. Not a great idea. And we don't allow women to even start telling their stories until the late 1700s, early 1800s in the United States and in Europe. And one of the first women in England that wanted to be a novelist had to use a guy's name as a pseudonym, George Eliot. What a shame. And then along come the Brontes and Jane Austen, and women start telling their stories. So the feminist literary theorist is looking into literature, if it's old, to reconstitute the missing feminine. And the modern, if you're looking at a more contemporary work of literature, the job of that critic or a feminist reader is simply to ask yourself some pretty serious questions. Interrogate that text. How are women being treated, portrayed, characterized in this story? Do they have agency? Do they seem to have authority? Are they being treated in a way that we could say is human? This is important. This is an important way to think. And I'm not a woman, not necessarily a feminist in that way, but why not try to read like one? Why not try to put that on, like in the same way you're trying out the flying of a kite or a car or anything. Try it. Try to think and read in a different way. And the third one I want to put before you is queer theory. In the same way that feminist literary critics are, after trying to reconstitute the missing feminine in a given story or study how they're being portrayed, the queer theorist, this is a thing, queer theorists, queer readers are looking for how those characters are being treated, and particularly in the olden days, they're looking for the missing LGBT person, right? Hemingway, Faulkner, and F. Scott Fitzgerald, I know they wanted to write about this stuff, but they couldn't. I'm not sure that Maxwell Perkins at Scribner's in New York would have allowed that. So you got to dig down. You got to go into that white space. Might there be a queer person in F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby? Got a hunch on Jordan. Not sure, but I'm thinking so. And how about As I Lay Dying? Might there be a young gay man somewhere hidden in that novel? Got a hunch. Hate to be a spoiler alert, so I won't say his name, but it rhymes with Carl and starts with a D. Don't know this for sure. Probably could Google it. Haven't. Study Sweet Darrell. He's my favorite character in As I Lay Dying. I love that man. And well, it's Hemingway that taught us that every story followed far enough ends badly. And I'm not going to finish that thought. You'll finish it if you read the book. And I hope you're reading. We're at the point in the semester where people are reading, people are skimming, people are not reading, etc. If you're reading, I love you. If you're not reading, I still love you. If you're skimming, I love you. And if you are reading and cheating by reading badly written plot summary on the internet, I still love you. Let's end with cute. Everybody was made happy by this today. I showed this to 3 straight classes. I can't teach in my church anymore. I can't teach my second graders. I furloughed all my teachers, so I'm just teaching the second graders live. I had 11 last year, now there's only 3. And because of the bishop's letter, I have to teach remotely also now with my confirmation students, because remember, the confirmation teacher quit, and now I got to do it. And good thing I got all this dope equipment to do it properly with. But check this out. This worries me so much, and yet I love them at the same time. These little boys are so cute. But you can tell developmentally they are not ready to learn online, okay? And this is the tip of the iceberg. There are millions and millions of kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders learning through a computer. They're not ready for it. I love all 3 of these boys, but I think if I have a favorite, it might be Wyatt. He's the really smart kid with the glasses and the spider on the t-shirt. He interrupts me constantly, and I love him for that. He's always cutting me off and correcting me and making sure that I've got things straight. And this is me 2 nights ago, Wednesday. I love you guys. Keep reading As I Lay Dying, and all will be well.
Come on, dude. That was a good thing, wasn't it?
Mm.
Okay, well, tell him.
Woke up this morning.
That's a good day. You woke up and you woke up and you went, wow, here I am. Now, I miss you guys, and I'm really sad that we're not in the church together. I've been having fun hanging out with you at 6 o'clock in Immaculate Conception, and we're going to stick with our routine, which is we pray, I ask you how things are going, and then we light a candle in honor of someone that's important to you. And this time out, we're going to start with Anthony. Anthony, I want you to think of someone that you want to light a votive candle for. And I want you to tell me who that is right now. Who would you like to light a candle for tonight that you love? Someone important to you. Are you there, Anthony?
My dad.
Okay, your dad. Now, we've been doing this all fall, Anthony, and you get to choose a red, blue, or green. What color do you want?
Green.
Just leave it.
Okay, I knew you were going to say green, Anthony, and that's why I got a green candle. And this is for your sweet father. This is for your dad. And we'll put that right here. And I always tell you when we're in church that it's important not to burn the church down when you're lighting candles. And when you're home, it's important not to burn your house down. Now, Mark, who would you like your candle lit in front for?
Grandpa.
Again? All right, what color do you want? Red, blue, or green?
Green.
What a surprise. I got a green candle, Mark. It's amazing. It's amazing. I just had this feeling that green would be the answer. And now we are down to Wyatt Ritter. Wyatt, who do you want to light a candle for?
It's not for somebody, but I would have to say our world.
Whoa, you went big. Wyatt just went global on us. That's amazing. Okay, I will light. What color do you want? Red, blue, or green?
Green.
Amazing. I have a green candle.
Everybody does.
Do you guys always pick green?
They pick green week after week. It's just been green, green, green. And that's why.
I bet if you had
One time I chose red.
Did you? You're always correcting me.
Like,
I'm always making mistakes. And Wyatt points out my blunders. Okay, guys, I want you to bring your parents into the camera a little bit if you can.